also interesting is in South Africa, I mean, as I grew up, there was a huge, everything was political. You could hardly read or write a book that was not political, and there was a sense that writing, in such a kind of dysfunctional society, writing anything that is not somewhat or fairly overtly political seemed like an indulgence, And I think there was just such a saturation that people got fed up with that, to some extent. And I think that happened quicker in the Afrikaans community, So there was a complete, like an explosion of different things happening, like from strange, like avant-garde experiments to like a historical sense. Whereas I think in South Africa, Afrikaans is a little more in that fractured space at the moment, whereas English, it would still be, I would say also the black readership, although more black people in South Africa actually understand Afrikaans if you include it as a second language and so on. That is not the direction of push. The push is towards towards English and so on. So they are, many people that haven't had like a reading culture before, they are entering a reading culture, or they are mostly entering a television culture and internet culture, but through the medium of English rather than through the medium of Afrikaans. So.
I actually have two questions, and I was here when Jorge Bonte was here with his translator, and to be quite frank, I really felt there was a real disconnect in this romantic writer and a translator who did not appear to me to be concerned with anything but the actual writing of the book. And we had the opportunity to talk to the two of them. They had never met, they had never communicated during the translation. I had two questions. Here are my two questions. My thought is that to translate poetry, you need to be a bit of a poet. To translate drama, you need to be the drama. You need to have that in you to do it effectively. So I wonder, is that true? And secondly, for you who read the translation of your book, how do you feel when you read it? Has it become someone else's in a way? Or do you still feel it is what you had intended? Those are my two questions.
Yes, I think this translation is written by Edna McCown from Goethe Institute in New York, and I met her 3 weeks ago, and before we are mailing, and I think it's my sound, but when I'm writing, I listen to music usually, and the language is in a rhythm, and she understands it and takes it into the same rhythm. And I don't know exactly is this the right word, or maybe there are another word in English, but I think it's the same sound, and this is for me important. And I hope I can work with Edna McCown together for a long time.
And do you consider yourself a dramatist and a novelist?
I have a background in theatre, but not as a playwright. I mean, I have a literary background in terms of my education. Like Crafton, I never took a course in literary translation and went off them, but I have an MA in French literature. I wrote an MA thesis on contemporary thing. But I was a drama critic, and I've worked for 20 years as a dramaturg, working with playwrights. And I know, for instance, that when I talked about a script being a score that is to be played by instruments called actors, I really know from having spent years in rehearsal halls that not only do they have to do the obvious thing, get their tongue around it, it's not just does the language flow, but they have to be able to breathe it. The end of the sentences have to be structured in a way that they can deliver it with the breath, and they have to embody it as well. And then they have to be able to move it around and stamp their foot at a certain point or something. And if you've really been in the theater a lot, you know that. You've got that instinct. It's one of the filters that you apply when you're revising your translation, which I don't have to do when I'm doing essays or novels. I don't have to apply that filter of it having to be played through the living instrument. So I think you're right. Yes, I like Pravda. I don't translate poetry. But I don't think you have to be a novelist to translate a novel, or an essayist to translate it. But some knowledge of theater, and probably, yes, probably you have to be a poet to translate poetry. And I think you have to want to know the playwright, and again, it's practice. You have to want to know the world where that play comes from. I can't imagine translating Jorge and not having been to Mexico City and wanting to meet him. He's very meetable. He goes around to all sorts of literary festivals. I mean, I can't imagine the arrogance of that translator, whose name escapes me, but I'm surprised. What can I say?
I think we have time for one last question. If not, well, I'm not that. Well, thank you guys all for coming, and thank you all for being on. It's fantastic.